and welcome to Truth in Movies. My name is JayDreamerZ, and welcome to my channel. This is a segment where we break down symbolism as I see it whenever I'm watching the movies. I feel like Hollywood drops us a lot of truth breadcrumbs. So there's a lot of truth that is said in jest. There's a lot of truth that is told in story form. So whenever I watch movies, I add things to the Rolodex of my mind. I take notes all over the place. I'm like, wow, that's just like this in real life. So because I do that, I'd like to share my thoughts about these movies with all of you. Today's movie is called Buckaroo Banzai. It's got a lengthy title. It's a really weird and obscure movie that's not very popular. Many of you probably never even heard of it. You've probably never even seen it before. I'll be honest, I had never heard of this movie until I watched Ready Player One, and one of the characters dressed up as Buckaroo Banzai, and they made a big deal about it. I'm like, what movie are they talking about? This movie is a cult classic. It came out around the same time as some other very popular movies in, I think, the mid-'80s or something. So it didn't get very good screenplay. It wasn't advertised very well, and I feel like there may be a reason behind that. I feel like maybe it was done purposefully to keep this particular movie and the truth that it contains away from the audience. There is sound. Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate you, Paul. All right. Paul in the chat is ready to go. He says there's sound. Sometimes I mess that up. All right. So let's talk about Buckaroo Banzai. Just so that you know, they made plans to make a sequel to this movie and everything, but it was never done. This movie's basically been swept under the rug. I highly recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. You can usually find it for free on various streaming platforms. But let's jump right into the movie and break down a lot of the symbolism, because there's a bunch going on here. So we start off, you've seen this before in the movies, the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lion or whatever. So what, right? Let's break this down, because I see this quite often in the movies, and I feel like they share symbolism and secrets of their symbolism with us, not just in the movies, but in these little things that they put on before the movies. So what does this mean? Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer? What does that even mean, right? Nobody knows what that means. Metro, these are all words in Latin, essentially, if you trace them back far enough. Metro is related to the word meter, and it means to count. Gold is just like gold, how you are used to gold, like, you know what I mean? Gold, like gold bars and things made out of gold and stuff. So count, gold, and then win. Win is a rune. It's a Norse rune that basically means the letter W. The letter W is the same as the word Vav, or the number 6 in Hebrew. So count the golden number 6s. And then we've got Mayer. What does Mayer mean? It's German, Hebrew, and Latin origins. And the meaning of Mayer is bright, shining. So if we put all that together, we have count the bright, or count the shining golden 6s, or count the shining golden spirals, etc., and so on and so forth. Then we've got these words over here, trade and mark. This is the mark of a trader. Quite literally, this is the mark of a trader. Tracy, wow, $100. You're amazing. Thank you. I super appreciate you. Wow, that was very kind. Very kind. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. So the mark of a trader. Now, is that good or bad, right? Who are they a traitor against? Well, I believe that there are those who have rebelled against a particular system or instruction, ordinances, laws, whatever it may be. They have come down to our world and they have taught that rebellion, etc. It's an age-old story, so we won't get into it too much. I'll let you interpret that as you'd like to. So we've got count the shining golden 6s at the top. We've got, this says ars gratia artis, which means art for art's sake, or art for the sake of art. And then we've got the mark of the trader right there, plain and simple. Then we've got this weird symbol down here at the bottom, this mask looking thing. I'm not sure what to make of that, honestly. And then we've got the 3 Vavs at the bottom, WWW, of course. Let's move on. All right. Now, the next thing that they'll show you is they're showing you who's making the movie, who's producing it, right? The production company is called Sherwood Productions. Well, what does that mean? I've heard Sherwood, like in Robin Hood, Sherwood Forest. Sherwood means luminous wood. That's strange, isn't it? Right? What wood is luminous? Bright and shining wood, essentially. Or instead of wood, you could say the word tree, because trees are where wood comes from, right? So shining tree. Why is that relevant? Because it's the tree of life, right? They're showing you the people that make these movies, right? This one, it says it's the mark of a traitor, but then they show you it's also made by people who represent the tree of life. Interesting, with the blue and the red symbolism up there. There's the cube or the box or the container, which represents our world, which is a container. And it's represented by those of the bright and shining tree, the world tree, the tree that all people can see all throughout time, every other age or every other apocalyptic cycle. So let's check this out. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. As you can see, there's already the double B's going on. Why is that symbolic, or what is it symbolic of? Well, ultimately you can come up with your own guesses. You can see that the number 8 there follows suit with the double B's in the background, right? That's done purposefully. They put the B's back to back like that because it makes an image of 4 lands, so to speak. So this could represent the land at the North Pole, or the land that was once at the North Pole, the 4 different lands divided by 4 rivers. And it also could represent the different out there in the cosmos, which we'll go into more in depth here in just a bit. But we live in what I call the fractalverse. The fractalverse is infinite, it's fractal, it's holographic in nature. And you can go outside of our sky, beyond our horizon, beyond our skyline, and everything would be huge. I mean, so massive. You would feel tiny. You would feel microscopic in comparison to the things that lie beyond. So I believe that these little dome shapes in the B represent various worlds. And there are those worlds that are above and those worlds that are below. And I believe that that's the symbolism there. So let's jump right in and find out more about Buckaroo Banzai. What makes Buckaroo Banzai special? Why is his name all weird and stuff? Let's check it out. Excuse me. And also, thanks again, Tracy. Super appreciate that. That was very kind. All right, Buckaroo Banzai. Born to an American mother and a Japanese father, thus began life as he was destined to live it, going in several directions at once. That's me. That's many of you out there. This movie is a call to many of us. They call us in the movie the Blue Blazers. And we'll talk about why they call us the Blue Blazers as well. And when I say us, I mean those who are light makers, those who are truth seekers, those who are creative in their mental abilities and in your source energy. All right. Going in several directions at once. That's us, right? We want to go all over the place. We are jacks of many trades, as they might say, right? A brilliant neurosurgeon, this restless young man grew quickly dissatisfied with life, devoted solely to medicine. He roamed the planet studying martial arts and particle physics, collecting around him a most eccentric group of friends, those hard-rocking scientists, the Hong Kong Cavaliers. So check this out. Those of you who are familiar with Buckaroo Banzai, whenever you hear about the movie or the person, Buckaroo Banzai, it's usually made a huge deal like, oh, wow, he's a neuroscientist, he's a brain surgeon, he's a rock star, he practices martial arts, he does all these things, and that's what makes him so special and so interesting and so unique. I would beg to differ. I think that it's more of a heart condition that sets him apart from everyone else. But those of us who have that heart condition, those of us who are kind... Oh, did the computer just freeze? Are we good? Let me know if we're good. I'm having a lot of technical difficulties. I'm sorry about that. All right, so hopefully we're still good. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat here. But my point is that it's not really that big of a deal, right? In society, they want us to be focused on like one thing, doing one thing and being good at that one thing. When in reality, we want to do many things. We want to reach out. We want to discover. We want to explore. We want to constantly grow and constantly change. And if we're constantly growing and constantly changing, constantly learning, that means that we'll become masters of many things, not just one thing. And that's what Buckaroo Banzai sort of represents. Now, he develops around him these eccentric group of friends. That's also many of us, right? Truth seekers tend to be eccentric in and of ourselves, but we also tend to well, like attracts like. So we tend to attract those who are like us. We are eccentric. So we have a small group of very good friends, very small group. We're not usually those types that have thousands of friends on Facebook that we don't really know. We've never really met. We tend to have a tightly knit small group or a small circle. Okay, so it looks like we glitched a bit. I'm super sorry about that. Working on some technical difficulties, but we're going to continue on since we're still recording and everything's good. All right, so he goes on. And now with this astounding jet car ready for a bold assault on the dimension barrier, Buckaroo Banzai faces the greatest challenge of his turbulent life. So, Buckaroo Banzai, in addition to performing brain surgery and whatnot, has created this jet car, which we'll show you in here in a minute, and they're going to be testing it out. There's something very special about this jet car, though. While high above the Earth, an alien spacecraft keeps a nervous watch on Team Banzai's every move. Now, the movie begins. Okay, let's get right into it. All right, sweet. So here we have, in the red glasses there, Buckaroo Banzai with one of his assistants. He's performing brain surgery. Now, he's performing surgery, and he says, when you get right down to it, this far inside the head, it all looks the same, right? That's seeing the oneness in everything, symbolically speaking. And then he says, no, don't tug on that. You never know what it might be attached to. Now, check this out. That's actually deep, okay? Don't tug on that. You never know what it might be attached to. If we recognize the connectedness between all things, we realize that whenever we try to force something to happen, usually because we drop down a level, we become a bit selfish, and we want to change things. We want to manipulate things, right? We want things to go our way or go the way that we would like them to go. But if you tug on that, you never know what it might be attached to, right? All of life is a giant domino effect. One thing, when you take action on one thing, it is connected to a myriad of other things. That's why I always say there is never a time when you are not actively changing the world. You're actively changing the world all of the time, every second, every moment of your life, because everything is connected. So no matter how small of a thing you feel like you might be tugging on or pulling on or trying to impact, you're actually changing everything, all of it, all at once. All right, so be careful with our actions and be wise in our path. That's the lesson to be learned there. All right, so he says Dr. Banzai is using the laser to vaporize a pineal tumor. So check this out. First of all, a pineal tumor is a growth in the tumor a growth in the pineal gland, right? A tumor is a growth on the pineal gland that keeps the pineal gland from being activated, that keeps the pineal gland from secreting all of the different hormones and chemicals and stuff that open up the mind, that expand the mind and our consciousness, right? Chemically, at the very least. So what he's working on to start this movie is to free the mind. And I like that about him. So once he's done with his operation and his surgery, he gets dressed up. He goes out to the desert because he's going to test out his rocket car. All right. So he's out there with the rocket car. His handle is HB88. There's a lot of 88s in this movie. And we'll talk about the number 88 here as well. He says HB88, this is ground control, and he's getting some instructions. They say clear the area. There's his rocket car, as you can see. So at first you think that he's just going to try to go as fast as he can and get some sort of land speed record. So let's find out if that's what happens. Now check these guys out in the background. This guy's dressed kind of regular. The firefighter's dressed regular. But then we've got these two guys in these silver metallic suits. There's the 88 on the car once again. Now, inside of the car, you see this little interesting device. And it says that it's activated, right? He doesn't need this in order to break a land speed record. Now, look at the shape of this device. Does it look familiar? It kind of reminds me of the flux capacitor, right? The thing that makes time travel possible. To leave the world as it is now and to enter into a different world, or a world that is altogether alien or seems like it's in another time from where we are now. Then, of course, you've got these guys that I talked about earlier. There's another 88 on the license plate there. These guys are dressed up in like radioactive gear, just like in Back to the Future. They dress up in radioactive gear. All right, so he takes off. He breaks this record or whatever. He's coming back. He's coming right at the camera, and boom, he veers off. He takes an angle. He goes in another direction. This is important because just this act is symbolic that that's what he represents. He represents not following the status quo, the mainstream, but trying new things, being an explorer, going off the beaten path, going in a different direction. They say he's off course. This is chase 1. He's off course. You can see him taking off like he's in the Batmobile over there. He has broken trajectory. That is what an angle is, or the word angel. It's exact same word, exact same root. The angle means to deviate from a path. That's how you get an angle. That's why the angels are called such. There's also the fallen angels. Well, there are those who are more obedient and stay on the path, and there are those who take a different path, a different route. Those are those who have strayed from the course, essentially. Now, is that good or is that bad? I'll leave that up to you. All right, so inside we see that it says, Buckaroo, are you decompressing? Over. So his craft needs to decompress. There's pressure inside of his craft. Now, in order for him to do what he's about to accomplish, he has to go through decompression. Now, I talk about the macrocosmic, or the bigger reality, happening symbolically on a smaller scale. So they'll show us inside of this rocket car something that is happening or will happen symbolically, or that represents something symbolically on a larger scale, which means our world needs to decompress before it's able to do what this rocket car is about to do, and we'll show you that in here in just a second. So they show you this red night vision type of thing. I don't know why they even have that. There's no need for it. But I'll tell you that it's symbolic. Like I showed you whenever we broke down the TV show Loki, they have these red lights, and the red lights, especially right before something drastic or something huge changes, something happening to change the course of the movie or the story or whatever happens, usually it introduces something magical, something that is fantastic, something unbelievable. So they show you the red lights quite often in these movies. Why? Because our sky turns red. This is all symbolic of us. This is our life. Every movie that exists, every book that exists, every song that exists is a reflection of us and our world and what we are going through, no matter how fantastic it may seem to be. All right, so he says axis negative, pneumatic pressure negative. Now that's important too. The pressure is now negative. So there has been a depressurization inside of his vehicle, and it's necessary so that he can head towards the mountains. He's headed for the mountains. So he's in this rocket car. He's headed for a mountain. This is symbolic for many of us who, from time to time, from apocalypse to apocalypse, make a sacred journey, a holy journey, an expedition, and an exodus, however you'd like to call it, to the holy mountain, to Mount Meru, to Mount Sinai. I mean, there's so many different names for this holy mountain. And people will take a trek there. Now, his rocket car shoots this blue beam right at the mountain. We have your blue beam plasma volcano symbolism. And there's actually some volcano symbolism later on in the movie too. But the blue beam hits the mountain. The jet car is going as fast as it can, and boom, he goes right through the mountain. He goes into the mountain following this blue beam, right? Just like the wise men of the world and the wise women of the world will do. They will follow the blue beam. Hey, what's up, Lena? Good to see you again. All right, so they follow the blue beam. He goes inside of the mountain. Now, he's showing you what is inside the mountain. He's inside of solid matter, right, in the movie. But is he really? What is this symbolic of? We'll get to that here more in a bit. They say he's off my scope and he has crossed over. You see that word, crossover? So now he has crossed over. So many of you have probably on your truth-seeking path come across the legend of Nibiru, the planet of the crossing that allegedly comes close to our world from time to time, and that's when aliens can jump off and come into our world or whatever. I have a different slightly variation. I have a slightly different variation of that. And I believe that Nibiru is the place of the crossing up in the sky. It's the hole that opens up in our sky when our world depressurizes. that allows passage between our world and space or the heavens. And then there, of course, you see the Vav symbol. The Vav symbol is the hook. It's kind of like a Y in the ancient languages. Excuse me. All right, so he's inside of the mountain. First thing you see is electricity all over the place. All of this bluish white light. And they say, we've got his tracks. They go right into the mountain, right? Right up to a wall of rock. Now, he's inside of the mountain. You see this blue electrical light all over the place, just like you would if you were to go inside of our world, inside of the earth. You would see electricity all over the place. It's called prana. It's called vril. There's various names for it, but it's the elixir of life. It's pure soul. It's pure spirit. It's pure energy. Now, check out what he sees when he's inside of this place, right? Look around at the terrain of this otherworldly place that he's in. You'll see that this is the 8th dimension, right? But doesn't the 8th dimension look a lot like the microscopic world? We're going to come back to this one a little towards the end. But I wanted to show you so that you can get a feel for it. You've seen things like this in Doctor Strange. You've seen things like this in Ant-Man, where they basically go down into our microcosm, into the microscopic world. But sometimes they do that to show you that you're already in the microscopic world. Comparatively speaking, it depends on if you look up or if you look down and how you compare yourself to what is around you. All right, so let's keep on going. So he's flying through the 8th dimension. There's some sort of a creature that's coming at his window, flying towards him. It's electrified. He hits it. It hits into his window, and then they show you some more of the 8th dimension. This is supposed to be, these are all flashing on the screen very quickly. So we show you all of these. That's an electron microscopic picture from an electron microscope. And you can see these would represent like the different pathways that are out there in the heavens that I call plasma conduits. You can see the plasma or electricity running through them. And they connect different neurons. They connect different worlds, different places of information collecting and sharing, we'll say. All right, so he's about to come out of the mountain. The blue beam shoots out once again. You've got that light blue beam symbolism. He comes out of the mountain, and everyone celebrates. He's gone through the mountain. So this is another one of the accomplishments of Buckaroo Banzai, right? Now, he was just going to break some sort of land speed record, everyone thinks, but then he goes right through a mountain. And his helper on his walkie-talkie says, "We're reading an electrical field aberration of 993 on your windshield." So there's some sort of electrical charge on his windshield that shouldn't be there. So he touches the windshield, and look what happens. Look what he pulls up from his hand. There's some sort of goo. There's some kind of an ooze coming off of the windshield that has this excess charge to it, electricity, right? Now, I've talked about this a few times in the past. I believe that this residue is a byproduct of high electrical charge or plasma discharge, right? And that this is basically the honey of the sacred bees of old. And it's also like ambrosia, and it's also stuff that people went on expeditions to try to find this stuff, because if you eat it and put it into the body, it extends your life because it's a byproduct of the pure plasma or the pure electrical energy, and it is charged. And so if you eat it, your body becomes charged and you live longer, etc. All right, so there's the goo, there's the ectoplasm, whatever you'd like to call it. It's also, by the way, if it dries out, you can create little wafers out of it called mana. All right, so we move on. And this is the Hong Kong Cavaliers. That's his eccentric group of buddies that he hangs out with. They're all on TV. And they're being interviewed. And they say, "Could you elaborate on that device?" I believe dubbed the oscillator. And they say oscillation overthruster. So oscillation means to spiral or to turn in circles, right? To overthrust means to shoot upward or to shoot outward strongly. Okay, so it's spiraling and it's shooting outward strongly. Basically, it's symbolic for the plasma volcano beam, the blue beam that shoots up out of the plasma volcano, probably oxygenated. Then we've got this guy. Now, this guy, we're going to learn some more about him. His name is Emilio Lizardo. And you don't know this yet, but he's inside of a mental ward right now. He's watching his television and he's checking out what's happening with Buckaroo Banzai. So his mind has been possessed by one of these otherworldly beings that are trapped in the 8th dimension. We're going to get more into that in a minute. I just want you to know he's inside of a mental hospital and he's not himself. Emilio Lizardo is like the human version of him, but then he's possessed by one of these otherworldly aliens, which we'll talk about soon too. All right, so the guy on the intercom at the psych ward says tranquilizers are being dispensed to all patients. This is also our world. This is the world that we live in. Okay, so there's some sort of an alien creature that has possessed this doctor right here, and he's trapped. He's locked up in a mental ward, in an asylum, as are we all. If you take a look around these days, it's not hard to really point it out. I think it's becoming very evident to all of us that the world has gone nuts. So let's move on. All right, so this guy decides to electrocute himself, basically. This alien race loves electricity. They feed off of it, right? It gives them pleasure to be electrocuted, essentially. And then he starts having a flashback back to whenever he was possessed. So we're going to show you, this is him right here, back when he was a regular human, before he was possessed. And they say, Dr. Lizardo, we're almost ready. And he's actually going to test out this blue beam. So the blue beam shoots out, and they put a mark on the wall because he's going to pass into and through the wall, just like Buckaroo Banzai passed through the mountain, right? They say electromagnets, they are charging. And then he takes off, right? He's going to go right into that wall and try to go right through it into the 8th dimension. But this guy's like, no, not yet. We're not ready. No, it's not time. This is symbolic. You can only do this symbolically. Symbolically, they're trying to escape our world, okay? That's the short end of it. This is all about leaving our world and entering into our world. But this guy says it's not time yet. It's not time to do that. You have to go at the right time. Timing is crucial. So we've got the blue beam that shoots out, which is going to open up a portal into the 8th dimension. Looks a lot like and reminds me of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This guy's literally going to shrink himself down so that he can pass between electrons and protons and atoms and things like that, traversing the 8th dimension, which is the microscopic equivalent of like the tinier dimension. So he gets halfway into it. He's not able to escape. His head goes through the wall, and when he's inside of the wall, right, this is like his camera view of what he sees. He sees these otherworldly alien creatures that are inside of there. Now remember, he's basically looking into our microscopic. So whatever he's looking at now is, you can't imagine it being the same size as him. You have to imagine it being microscopic and super tiny. So we see these super tiny microscopic alien creatures. One of them gets into his head because he's halfway in that world and halfway in this world. He's sort of lukewarm. He's between two worlds right now. So because of that, he gets possessed by one of these creatures right there that's able to get into his head. When they pull him out, he's totally plasma possessed. He's out of his mind. He's possessed by this creature that is now inside of his head in the mesocosm, which is our world. So it drives him crazy. He instantly starts to try to kill people. Now remember, he's also received a high electrical charge. It could be related to plasma possession, which is the overamplification of your spirit. So whatever state your spirit is in, when you are plasma possessed, it becomes amplified. If you're bad, essentially, you become very bad. If you're good, become very good. So he goes on a killing spree. And then we go back to the present day. Okay, this was helping him to sort of, I guess, recollect and bring back those memories. So he takes off this electrocution device. Oh, I wanted to show you that picture behind him as well. Let's go back to that real quick. The picture that he drew on the window. Because there's some more symbolism there too. Did I have a picture of it? I did not. All right, well, I'm sure I have a picture of it coming up. Okay, so Dr. Banzai replied, okay, hold on. The man on the television, right? The guy who's on the news or whatever that he's watching says, when asked what he saw and asked where he went, Dr. Banzai replied, vast chasms of hissing swamp and spurts of flame. Now, I'll give you a hint. This also describes our world. After we go through the apocalypse, our world is shaken up so much worldwide that it becomes liquefied. It's liquefaction. All of the water inside of the crust of the earth rises up to the top to mix with all of the dirt and soil, creating a muddy swamp-like world. Also, it releases a lot of gas that comes up into an electrically charged atmosphere, which means you will see spurts of flame coming up out of the ground should you be one of the survivors. All right, so he says, I feel so break up. I want to go home. Now, this is not the human speaking. This is the alien entity that has possessed his mind. It wants to go home. All of these alien creatures that are trapped in our world today, I believe that they're all trapped here, until the world opens back up, okay? They're trapped here. That's the point. They want to go home. They want to come in here. They want to arrive. They have a purpose they'd like to accomplish. But once they're done with that, they don't want to stay here any longer. I believe the reason for that is because it takes away from their lifespans. They start to die quickly. They're no longer immortal, basically. All right, so one of the orderlies comes in. As you can see, Dr. Lizardo is a religious person. And look at the picture there. I think I have a better picture of it. It's a perspective picture of like a dock or something. But as you can see, this is an unfinished pyramid with an opening above it, or an eye above it. It's the all-seeing eye and the plasma volcano, or the hole in the sky and the plasma volcano. You also see the pyramid structure right behind him, which I'll show you here in a minute. He's got a picture of himself at the top, and then all of the alien creatures. All of these alien creatures inhabit our world, just like in the movie They Live. There is a perception filter on mankind where we don't recognize these creatures. We cannot see them. Only under certain circumstances are they revealed. So we go back to Buckaroo Banzai. He's going to go out and celebrate. The way that they like to celebrate is they like to go out and do a random show, a rock concert. So they go out. As you can see, there's a lot of blue light symbolism as well. They make their way to the stage. There's another 88 right there. And Buckaroo Banzai starts to rock out. But then he stops in the middle of the concert. Everyone's having a blast. Everyone's having a good time. But he stops because he feels something, right? Something's off. Something's not right. And he says, excuse me, is someone out there not having a good time? Is somebody crying? And everyone's like, what? What's going on? What's going on? And he looks over and he sees this girl, Penny Pretty. Penny Pretty is upset. She's down on her luck. She's crying during the concert and everything. She says, I lost my room at the Y this morning. The Y is the Vav. Remember, that's the shape for the Vav, the ancient number 6, essentially. She lost her room there, which means she's not there anymore. She represents Sophia, or the goddess of wisdom, etc. So she lost her room at the Y this morning, and the crowd starts getting into it. They're like, boo, oh man, she's messing up our good time, etc. And I love the response by Buckaroo Banzai. He says, hey now. Don't be mean. We don't have to be mean. Because remember, no matter where you go, there you are. I love this. He stops everything he's doing. Even though everyone's having a good time and they're vibing and stuff, she's upset. There's something wrong with someone. And this guy shoots for the good in everything. He wants us all to be of one mind. He wants us all to be celebrating. So he does his best to try to pick up that one person instead of continue to encourage all of the other people just because it's popular, just because that's what most people are doing. He stops right then and there to address the one person to help them out. And I love that. So he sits down. He starts playing a song on the piano for her. Now, you don't know this right now, but she basically has a twin sister that used to be married to Buckaroo Banzai, and he recognizes her. So, one moment. All right. So anyways, we move back over to Dr. Lizardo, and he goes up to the orderly. He picks up the phone. He's going to make a phone call. The orderly's like, where do you think you're going, Doc? The moon? Well, it's truth said in jest, right? Across from us, outside of our world, is the moon, which I call Well, I shouldn't call it the moon, really, but it is the sky. It is the firmament of our sister world across from us. So it could be a play on words there. Where do you think you're going? The moon? Yes, that could be exactly where he's going, is to the moon. He wants to leave here. He says, no, no, no. Planet 10. Planet 10, also known as Nibiru sometimes, and also the Roman numeral X, the planet X, planet of the crossing, planet of the crossover point, the place where you cross over. All right, so he says, operator, I want to make a call to Mr. John Big Booty. Now, this is interesting. John Big Booty. They're all named John. All these aliens are named John. It's very interesting. And there's much symbolism there, which we'll come back to. Big Booty, I have a theory about that. I believe that these alien creatures may not represent, it may be dual symbolism. It may represent those actual bipedal aliens that are our size that come into our world and they try to take over and stuff, but it also may have a secondary symbolic meaning, which is the microcosmic aliens that exist in our world today, right? Microscopic creatures, many of them have big booties. Many of them have like a thorax or whatever, and they have like, you know, a huge backside, basically. He says, I want to make a call to John Big Booty at Yoyodyne Propulsion Systems over in Grover's Mill. Now, Grover's Mill might sound familiar because that's where War of the Worlds took place, where the aliens invaded at Grover's Mill. So this guy's playing the Buckaroo Banzai video game. Dr. Luzardo reaches over to touch it, and boom, it electrifies. It short circuits, right? Because he's electrically charged, as many of these otherworldly creatures tend to be. Then they lose that charge when they come into our world. Every other cycle, whenever the blue beam is not shooting up and filling our world with that electric energy, whenever our world starts to dissipate and that blue beam retracts back down into the earth. So this guy says, we have created a device called an oscillation overthruster, which we've already discussed, which systematically reorders matter by annihilating electrons and positrons. So it reorders matter, just like I've speculated about the plasma that enters into our world having the ability to change genetically our DNA, right? To create mutants and to mutate things and to change one thing into a totally different thing at the genetic level. All right, so Buckaroo Banzai gets a call from the president. He's like, hello, Mr. President, etc. And actually, on the other line are these aliens out there in quote-unquote space. Now, these alien creatures are dressed up like Jamaicans, okay? Throughout the movie, there's two classes of alien creatures. There are the blacks, which are the good guys, essentially, and then there are the reds. They're called lectroids because they are electric in nature. The story goes, when they scanned Earth, their beam hit Jamaica. So they thought that all of Earth's inhabitants looked like everyone in Jamaica, like Rastafarians. So that's kind of how they dressed up, you know, because they were going to visit Earth or whatnot. Now, the black lectroids send him a message. He thinks he's talking to the president, right? They send him a message by shocking him. They send a message right to his brain that contains about an hour's worth of information, all in an instant. It hits him in the ear, goes right into his head, and all of a sudden he freaks out. He runs back into the conference room and he says, "They're evil, pure and simple from the 8th dimension. Grab them." So now these guys are exposed. To everyone else, they look human, but to Buckaroo Banzai, they look like this, right? Evil, pure and simple. So now he's able to recognize these 8th dimensional creatures or whatever in our world, and they're called lectroids. So they say, grab them. Now they go off to a different scene where there's these two guys duck hunting or whatever, and there's this weird UFO alien craft thing that flies overhead, and they shoot at it, and it starts to crash down to the ground. Meanwhile, we've got these other lectroids, the red ones. And as you can see, this guy right here, he's sipping what looks like he's drinking from a battery. They love electricity. They feed off of it. So they're showing you that in the movie. And then we finally get our butts off this rock. That's the whole point. They want to get out of here. They've had enough living here on Earth. They want to go back into the heavens, back to where they can live much longer and enjoy superpowers and all kinds of stuff that's granted to them outside of this world. All right, so they say that they picked up on an emergency beacon from a black thermopod, which is that spacecraft that was just shot by the duck hunters. We go back to Buckaroo Banzai. He says, "I've been ionized, but I'm okay now." Ionized, basically, it means electrified, right? Ionizing radiation. Is it dangerous to ionize the human body? When atoms in living cells become ionized, one of three things usually happens. 1, the cell dies. 2, the cell repairs itself. Or 3, the cell mutates. Those are the three possibilities of human ionization during the plasma apocalypse. All right, we go back to this Buckaroo Banzai's teammates. He says, calling all blue blaze irregulars in the Golden State. So now they're calling for help. So they get on the radio, and everyone who supports Buckaroo Banzai, everyone who is on his team, basically it's the Good Vibe Tribe, okay? They're called the blue blaze irregulars. The blue blaze is the blue light that shoots up out of the plasma volcano that brings life and happiness and all kinds of peace and stuff to the world, wisdom, right? The irregulars, that's us. That's us who are just, we stand out. We're different. We're not like the rest of the world. We are the blue blaze irregulars, those truth seekers that exist today. All right, so one of the aliens, remember they look like Rastafarians in the movie, basically. The good ones, right? The ones that are trying to help. I mean, it's all in how you look at it. I'm just going to call them the good ones. He says, "Hello, Buckaroo Banzai," and he's got this package, right, that he wants to give to him. And he tries to give him this pink package. He's at Buckaroo Banzai's hideout, basically. We go back inside, and they're doing some research, okay? That's what I love about this team. They're constantly researching. They don't just have regular jobs where they go to work and they take calls and they go home and they make dinner, etc. They're constantly trying to improve the world through their research, through their practices, right? So he says, check out these names. John Coyote, John Jones, John Chief Crier, John Rajesh, John. All of these aliens are named John. Very interesting. In case you're wondering what the name John means, it means Yahuwah Kanan, which means the gift of Yahweh, essentially. There's also one of the pillars in Freemasonry that is named Jekin or Yahuakin, Joaquin, Juan. These are all the same names. All right, and they all came about in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 11/1/38. Now, we've got this guy who says Halloween, 1938. Interesting. War of the Worlds, that fake radio news broadcast that got everybody scared thinking that real live Martians were landing in Grover's Mill. And that's exactly where these guys are based in this movie. Then it all turned out to just be a hoax. Well, wait a minute. Is it? Maybe it wasn't a hoax. Or maybe it isn't a hoax, right? Sometimes they tell us that these are hoaxes when in reality they're just cover-ups. All right, so these guys are all standing behind this sort of whiteboard that's see-through. And right here, look what it says. Produces all gravity. And right underneath that, wait, let me make that a bit bigger so you can see it. Produces all gravity. And then it says electricity and magnetism. That's just from the movie. I happen to agree. All right, let's see what else I got. So now they've received this message from the Rastafarian aliens or whatever. That's not really what they look like. That's just what they look like to us, okay? In order to make us feel more comfortable, because in reality, they're very grotesque and strange looking, right? So he says, "Salutations, great Buckaroo Banzai." Now, as you can see, this woman is also under like a blue beam, like the bluish white light. And basically, Dr. Lizardo intends to steal the overthruster. The overthruster represents Mount Meru, okay? There are those who would try to take control of the area surrounding Mount Meru. They would try to even encapsulate it by building around it, which could also give us the Tower of Babel symbolism. If he should attempt this, now they're wearing this funny bubble wrap all over their face and stuff, and this is just so that they can see this. It's just a makeshift technology that they're using in the movie. It's kind of corny, but it works. "We will have no choice but to disrupt worldwide electronic communications and fire a particle beam weapon from your airspace to Smolensk in the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics." And he says that's an action that the Kremlin will most certainly misinterpret as an American first strike. So, interesting. way back in this Buckaroo Banzai movie, they're talking about how Russia and America and the tensions between them will be used during this sort of apocalyptic, semi-apocalyptic in the movie event, right? And there's always a war, right? There's always a war between these two factions just before the apocalypse comes. Every single time there's been an apocalyptic event, there's usually some sort of major war happening at the same time. And that's because of the energy that's in our world that amplifies right before it pops, okay? So everyone's energy is amplified, which means a lot of aggression in the world. Someone breaks into the jet car. They're looking for that little device that allows them to go into the 8th dimension. And they take out one of the people who has this weird thing on his neck, this weird alien thing that basically kills him. So they're fighting all the aliens inside of the lab. They're looking for the aliens because they got away. Now, this guy right here, who's on Buckaroo Banzai's team, I forget all the actors' real names, but they're very popular and very famous. It's because I get nervous. Usually I know all their names, but I'm nervous when I do my live streams. Anyways, so they're walking through looking for the bad guys. And this guy, who's kind of a newbie to the team, he says, "Why is that watermelon there?" And off to the side, you can kind of see a watermelon here. And they keep walking. And the other guy on his team says, "I'll tell you later. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you later." He never tells him. He never tells him later. And this is actually one of the things that people talk about whenever discussing the weird things that happen in this movie. Why did they put that in the movie? That's huge. It's all across the internet. Why is that watermelon there? Somebody tell me. Somebody tell me. Everyone wants to know why that watermelon was there. Now, some people will say it's just a joke, that they included it in the movie to see if the people who were producing the movie were paying attention. I don't know how much I buy that. I believe this is symbolic. They're talking to us. They're dropping breadcrumbs and clues. Why is that watermelon there? Oh yeah, that's right. It's Jeff Goldblum. Thank you. Who was that? Lena the nurse. Thank you, Lena. All right. So Jeff Goldblum is like, why is that watermelon there? They never answer the question. They do this in the movies all of the time. Why is this there? Why was that said? What is this about? They give us all of these trails that seem to go off into nowhere. These are clues for us to figure out. Why is that watermelon there? They're telling you to pay attention, basically. They're saying, hey, pay attention. And that's what we're doing. We're paying attention. We're breaking down this movie and we're listening to what it's talking about. Now, we go to the president's office. As you can see, the black and white floors over here. Excuse me. The president has some sort of a problem with his back. I guess the story goes his underwear were hiked up too high or something and it hurt him. And so now he's got to get all of that done. Now, this presidential advisor says, all I'm saying is that this jet car belongs in the hands of defense. I mean, if the Banzai Institute doesn't want to sell it to us, then we're going to have to take it from them. This is the governments of the world, the worldwide governments, the mind controllers of the world. If they can't buy it from people and they find value in it, they will take it from people. It is the world's largest operation of goons, in my opinion, and they're there not to help. They're there to take, okay, which is shown to you in this movie. All right, so now Jeff Goldblum over here is studying the little thing that was on that guy's neck, and he says these red creatures, they must somehow give off the bacteria. We breathe it. It swims up our nose into our cerebral cortex, into our brain, where it literally talks to our brain cells and tells us to see exactly what they want us to see. Now, in Doctor Who, which is Buckaroo Banzai is basically Doctor Who, this is called a perception filter, okay? It changes the way that we actually see the physical world, okay? It changes our perception of things. All of our perceptions are askew from the reality. The reality is the only thing that's real, but our perception is an illusion of what is real, if that makes sense. Also, I want to talk about these red alien creatures from the 8th dimension, or the ones that are trapped in the 8th dimension. They talk about how they release this substance. We breathe it in, it goes into our nose, and then it goes into our brain, and it infects our brain. Infection is a huge part of this movie. Parasitic infection specifically. Now, I believe that these aliens also represent parasites, which I'm going to talk to you guys about here in a bit. So he goes, electric brainwashing. Yes, so it is electric brainwashing. The world has been electrically brainwashed, or at the very least, just plain old brainwashed. All right, so this guy jumps on the horn. Yes, this is Emilio Lizardo. Take her to the pit. Now, you see what he's chewing on here? That's a sugar cube. Now, let's rewind a bit. Do you see what they're eating? They've got like caramel corn, Fritos. You'll see this all throughout the movie, and they don't really explain it. Why is that watermelon there, right? The reason why they always show these red alien bad guys, these aliens from another world, munching and chewing on junk food all of the time is because they also probably represent the parasites that exist in our own bodies. On the 8th dimension, on the microcosmic scale, that's what they eat. We feed them, literally, junk. We're putting all this junk into our bodies, and they live off of it. And then they send little electrical signals to the brain, controlling us and telling us, you crave more, have more coffee, smoke cigarettes, have more soda. You know what I mean? Like these little tiny parasitic creatures brainwash us. They tell us what to eat and why we have cravings and stuff like that. They show you this in the movie all the time. Which reminds me of Men in Black, right? We got another example of the alien, and first thing he wants is some sugar water. I want some sugar water in his Edgar suit. All right, so the president basically pulls out this card. He's about to declare war on Russia. And then, so the aliens kidnapped Penny, right? Buckaroo Banzai's crush. And so they said that you have to bring him the jet car. They want to take the jet car. They want to escape this world. They want to get out of here. And as you can see, they work at this place called Yo-Yo Dine, right? Yo-Yo, to go up and to go down, essentially, okay? And then Dine is the propulsion portion. So it's about propulsion going up and going down, right? This is all blue beam symbolism, the place at the North Pole where you can actually go up and down and escape and enter into this world. All right, so Buckaroo Banzai's inside. They've got him captured. They hooked him up to this electrocution device. And here you can see another sign that they show you out front of Yo-Yo Dine. It's got the plasma volcano, or the triangle, with the all-seeing eye, or the circle, in the middle of it. That's the symbolism there. Now we go inside, and they're like, work, work, work. They're repeating these mantras inside. This is the left-hand path. This is the side of the enemies of our world, or of humanity, that's very left-hand path oriented. The left-hand brain, they want you to work. The ends justify the means. It's very robotic. They're not very compassionate whatsoever. They just do what needs to be done. And we're going to talk about this ship here in just a second. That's an interesting looking alien ship. All right, so this guy wanders in, and the aliens are like, monkey boys are feeble. Lord Warfiend is supreme. They call us monkey boys, just like we call them reptilians. Think about that. All right, so we got Lizardo in the middle, and his buddy is like, we can still crush them here on Earth, right? This guy wants to stay and control humanity. Dr. Lizardo wants to take off and get out of here, so he says, no, it's time to go home, right? There is a time for them to come into our world, to try to take control, to start war against humanity or whatever. But then there's a time for them to leave, which means at the next apocalypse, which is why they're showing you the red lights going off in the background and stuff. They have a small window of time when they can leave. So when that time is starting to come, they all start getting ready, and the ones who are serious about it could care less about, enslaving humanity. They want to get out of here. They want to make the train. All right, so Buckaroo Banzai's inside spying on their ship. He says, what is that? And his buddy is like, it's a troop ship. Now look at it. This is one of the ships of the evil alien creatures. Look at all the little spines coming off of it and stuff. What would that even be for? What purpose would that even serve, right? Well, if it represents the microscopic, eighth dimensional creatures, parasitic creatures that live inside of the space of our body, right? Let's compare that to reality. Now, here's the eighth dimension. Let's go back a little bit. I'll show you again. This is the eighth dimension. When Buckaroo Banzai went into the mountain, he basically shrank down onto a microscopic scale to traverse these otherworldly regions, right? You can see there's like craters and stuff like that all over the place. There's lots of electrical charges. Look at the shape this electrical charge takes over this crater. It wraps around it because there is a confinement dome of magnetism surrounding the crater, which is what happens naturally in crater shapes. Then we've got like these other spiny looking things down here. It might just be me, but this looks like the microscopic. This looks like what is under an electron microscope when we zoom way far in and we can examine those things that exist that are too tiny for our eyes to see. When we go even further and we land on one of these substances, it looks like terrain. It looks like another world, even with atmosphere and a horizon and whatnot. But this is actually the microscopic, the 8th dimension. Now let's take a look at their spaceship that's out there in space outside of our planet or our world, right? Look at the design. Why would it look like that? If you look it up, they'll say, oh, you know, well, the producer saw like a conch shell or something, and he's like, oh, well, let's make it look like that for weird reasons, right? I believe it looks like this because these are the shapes that take place on the microscopic whenever we zoom in, like with an electron microscope. You can see basically that if this is some sort of amoeba, there's some different words. I wrote them down. Parasites, protozoa, amoebas, sarcodinas, and microorganisms. Okay, and that's why their spaceships look like microscopic creatures, because that's what they're showing to us symbolically. The 8th dimension is that dimension on the microscopic scale. Now, that's if we compare it to ourselves here on the mesocosm. If we don't, we are microscopic in comparison to the macrocosm. This is us compared to the Elysian fields that lie outside of our world, we'll say. The heavens or space, right? You would disregard the windows and all of that stuff. Basically, this is some sort of weird, strange, amoeba-like alien kind of creature. Here are some examples from the real world. It says the most well-known example of a sarcodine is the famous amoeba. Here's an amoeba. Looks just like the ship that we saw earlier. Here's another example with all the little things sticking out of it there, just like the alien ship had. Here's another example. Here's under a microscope. You can see this would be like the alien ship, right? The Lectroids. There's like, they come in different shapes as well. Sometimes they look weird, like the conch shell. Sometimes they look more like the spaceship with the little spines sticking out of it. Sometimes they're perfectly circular, just like the landing pod that was shot down by those duck hunters, right? And you see how gigantic that is. Think about how small we are in comparison. It's an interesting fractalverse that we live in. Or the new Doctor Strange calls it the multiverse of madness. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of this type of symbolism in the new Doctor Strange movie, so look for it. Here's another example of the various types of crafts that exist, the different types of alien creatures or whatnot. So we see this all throughout the movie. Buckaroo Banzai jumps into his spaceship, or into their spaceship, I should say. He hijacks one of theirs, and he's going to destroy it. Now remember, at the beginning of this movie, his whole goal started off by he's trying to open up the mind. He's trying to open up our minds. This is symbolic of us opening up our minds. He was performing brain surgery on someone trying to get rid of a tumor that was growing on the pineal gland. Watch what he's about to do to this amoeba-looking parasite that is down here in our world trying to make things bad for us. Bzz. He takes a laser beam, plasma, whatever, and shoots it at it, cuts it open, it blows up, the spaceship explodes. Buckaroo Banzai is taken off. That's basically like the end of the movie where he destroys the aliens. But now look, up there on his mesocosm or his normal, we see that he just blew up a spaceship or whatever. But down here on Earth, when we look up and we see strange things happening in the sky above us, out there in the macrocosm, out there in the larger universe or larger version of reality, we look up and we see strange lights in the sky and weird things happening, and we attribute it to just phenomenon and anomalies and strange things, and we try to come up with reasons for all of it. There might be a bigger picture at work that we're just a small piece of. All right, so he jumps out. I don't know where he got a parachute from, but he's got a parachute. Buckaroo Banzai saved the day. He was able to eradicate the parasitic alien nuisance, but Penny has died. So he goes into his room. Penny's laying down, and this is your Sleeping Beauty symbolism, okay? He gives her the kiss of life, which is symbolically represented by this blue electricity, right? So basically he shocks her and she comes back to life, just like we do in medical hospitals. I guess that's redundant, but just like we do in hospitals. When a patient is clinically dead, we shoot them back to life with electricity. We charge their soul. Their soul is running out. It's about to leave the body, right? They don't have enough energy to appropriately run the body so that the body can fix itself rather quickly, right? When that soul energy starts to run out, the body dies essentially. So he gives her energy back and strengthens her soul, which brings her back to life. And then that's basically the end of the movie. They show you the Buckaroo Banzai there. Wow, I went through that fast, didn't I? Jeez, I didn't even realize I was going through it that fast. All right, sweet. So that's Buckaroo Banzai. I wasn't in the chat the whole time. I do have an extra 5 minutes, so I'd like to jump in the chat and just kind of say what's up to everyone. If you want to get my attention, just type in J or at JayDreamerZ. I do want to say I'm going to roll the credits after this. There's still the credits from last month. I did try to redo them earlier today, but I have a problem with my software program. So I'm going to get those credits redone tomorrow morning, possibly tonight. That way everyone can get the proper respects and stuff like that. Because I like the credits. And I like to roll those for you guys. Plasma Bear is in the chat and says, late to the party, just want to send some good vibes to all. You guys are the Blue Blazers. Do you know that? We have so many different names, right? And it doesn't really matter what we describe things as. There's an essence to it. Your essence, my essence, and those of us who resonate with one another is we're different. We're not the same as everyone else. We look around and we see a monotonous, boring, usual world that sucks, and we want to change it, right? But we're brainwashed into thinking that we can't change it, and we're conditioned into adding to our own slavery by continuing to, put things into our bodies that are not good for us. And we get distracted by, just like they did with Russia and America and all of this stuff. When it comes down to it, the most important thing is that we care. Just like Buckaroo Banzai cared and showed that he cared by stopping his plans, stopping everything that was happening to address that one person and say, hey, is someone not having a good time? And then my favorite part, which is what I would recommend to all of you in the chat. If there's ever anyone in there that's bringing us down or whatever, hey, don't be mean. We don't have to be mean. Because wherever you go, there you are. Irregular Absolution is in the chat, and it looks like he came up on 5 months as a member of the Good Vibe Tribe, and it says, I may have missed it, but I still get to say hello. Well, hello right back to you. I'm super stoked to be a part of this with all of you. I love my job. I love talking to all of you. I love hanging out with the Good Vibe Tribe. Thank you for checking out my website too. A lot of people have been joining the website. I'm getting a lot of good things from it. Thanks for reading my book. And I love you guys. We got Rage Against the Machine in the chat, who says, JayDreamerZ, the plasma expert. Oh, well, thank you. Maria Becco says, Jaybird, what parasite? There's so many things that you can do. Stop feeding it sugar. Do a cleanse and flush. Well, hey, I love all of the advice. Ultimately, I say work on wherever you are, right? Wherever you are, there's going to be another step. To get to the top, you got to take your steps, right? So take that first step. Instead of trying to jump all the way up the staircase, take that next step. If you know it's not good for you to eat white sugar or whatever it may be, or to drink coffee, or, a myriad of different things, take that next step, right? There's always going to be other steps beyond that, but just focused on the path that lies ahead. Prestige. Hey, what's up, Prestige? Welcome to my channel. It's good to see you. Wild Hearts in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, I'm a new subscriber. Good vibes here. Right on. Good vibes to you too. Now, I just want to throw this out there. Does good vibes mean we have to be happy all the time? No, it totally doesn't, right? There's a time for everything. There's a place for everything. There's a time to be upset. There's a time to be mad. There's a time to be focused. There's a time to be peaceful. There's a time to play and do nothing and waste time. There's a time for all things. All right, cool. Well, I feel like that's a good time to wrap things up. Speaking of times for everything, I'm going to go ahead and run the credits. I love you guys. I care about you. I wish you the best, and I wish you good luck on your path and on your journey. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
I try so hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. I know I should have done this, should have quit this long ago. Can't stand another heartbreak, but it's time to let it go. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up.
The one you're talking about is called The Secret of the Elves.
So I've watched, shoot, 25 or 30 of your videos in the last few days. 'Cause I don't see too much out there about elves. And I've always